Bismillah. That's a lot of notes, Sheikh. That's a lot of notes.
Not really. That's in like a couple things. I promise. I didn't bring much. I don't have much to say.
You're very organized. It's very good.
That's all right. It's okay.
A little something.
A little something. Walaikum salam. How you doing, Akhi? Alhamdulillah. Let's get after it.
I got it recorded. We're good to go. So whenever you're ready.
Okay. And then you're gonna run away.
Oh, my sister is here again. I gotta give her a ride.
Come on. Your sister can stay and sit with us for 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
She won't like it. I'm gonna go ask her.
Yes. All right, here we go. So welcome to all of you to another installment in our weekly program, Studying the Sermon, where we, as you all know, expand on the topic of the khutbah, talk about it in a little bit additional detail, and mention things that we're not able to mention given the time constraints of the khutbah, and also afford you, the audience, the opportunity to contribute to the discussion in a meaningful way, whether through your feedback, through your commentary, through your contributions and anecdotes that you've experienced as related to the topic, or even critiquing the khutbah if you so choose. And the title of today's khutbah was The Real Focus of Fasting, Part 1. So we hope to share a few examples. We focus on one example today, but we hope over the next few days leading up to Ramadan, we will share a few other related topics or related subjects. So the main idea of today's khutbah, which you know had basically two halves to it. The first one was to clarify the reality of fasting and its primary objective, and to highlight matters that distract us from that and cost us rewards and blessings in the process. So basically, we wanted to focus on, in the beginning, highlighting the reality of fasting, what many of us think it is versus what it really actually is, and then also to highlight some matters that distract us from our primary objective while we're fasting and cause us to lose the blessings and benefits of fasting in the process. The second main idea from the second khutbah was to provide another nugget of black history that is pertinent to the American Muslim community and use it to highlight an area where we can improve. So let's start with a recap, or we'll recap the khutbah, mention some points or expand on some points of it, And the first thing is we started out at the outset talking about how fasting is more spiritual than it is physical. Fasting is more spiritual than it is physical. And we mentioned in the khutbah that Ramadan is about reining yourself in. And less so physically than spiritually and morally. And we said, contrary to popular opinion, fasting is a spiritual and moral exercise more than a physical, or not a physical one at all, right? In reality. And we supported this with a number of religious texts. First of all, we started out with, of course, with the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 183. where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. He says, fasting, O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those who came before you, so that you would attain piety, to make you more pious. We also mentioned several, and there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly says in no uncertain terms, very unequivocally, that the reason why He prescribed fasting was to affect what? To affect us spiritually, to affect us, to make us more pious, to affect us what? In a spiritual way. That fasting, its primary goal is to make us better humans, better Muslims, better believers, better worshippers, etc. But through that, we mentioned a number of texts from the Sunnah and one athar, one statement of one of the Prophet's companions, Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhuma. So we start off with the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, من لم يدع قول الزور والعمل به والجهل فليس لله حاجة أن يدع طعامه وشرابه. Whoever does not abandon falsehood in word and deed and ignorant crude behavior while fasting, then Allah has no need of him or her leaving food and drink. So let's talk about some of the points that come out of that speak to what we talked about, how fasting is more spiritual than physical. It is more a spiritual, moral exercise. But number one, let's start out with the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so the Prophet said, فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ. He said, if a person does not leave off lying and crude behavior while they're fasting, then Allah has no need. Like, ask yourself, does Allah have a need regardless? No, He doesn't have a need regardless. Right? So whether we are honest while we're fasting, whether we behave ourselves and comport ourselves appropriately while we're fasting or not, Allah doesn't have a need for our fasting. We're not doing Him a favor by fasting. So then what is the meaning of what the Prophet said when he says, if you do this and this, Allah doesn't have a need for your fasting? The scholars of Islam, they say, هَذِهِ كِنَايَةٌ عَنْ عَدَمِ الْقُبُولِ. The scholars, they say this is an illusion that one's fasting will not be accepted. Allah won't accept the fast of the person who does what? They lie and they behave crudely and ignorantly while they're fasting, right? Doesn't mean you won't get credit for fasting, right? It just means you won't get a reward. There's a difference between getting credit for fasting and being rewarded for the fast. You guys understand what I mean? So what does this indicate? It indicates clearly that the emphasis of fasting in Islam is more so spiritual than moral. Allah is focused on what? And the Prophet is focusing on what? Focusing on us being better what? On the inside than what? On the outside, right? Because it was primarily a physical thing. If the number one focus was physical, these things wouldn't matter, right? Lying and cheating and stealing and behaving ignorantly wouldn't affect it, because at the end of the day, you what? You didn't eat. You guys see that? You didn't drink. If it was just purely physical, these other external factors wouldn't matter. The fact that they matter so much that it will cause your fast not to be accepted, it means what? This is of primary importance. You guys see that? And this is something a lot of people what? They don't internalize. But let's look at the next one. The next one was the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ صَوْمِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَلَا يَرْفُثْ وَلَا يَجْهَلْ. In one riwayah he said, وَلَا يَسْخَبْ. Then he went on to say, فَإِنْ سَابَهُ أَحَدٌ أَوْ قَاتَلَ فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي إِمْرُؤٌ صَائِمٌ. He said, if one of you is fasting, then do not use obscene language or behave in an insolent manner. In another version he said, don't raise your voice. You can't even raise your voice while you're fasting.
And then he went on to say, and this is the really difficult one, the challenging one. He said, suppose someone insults you. They call you names and they try to what? They try to provoke you. Or even worse than what? They lay hands on you. Right? They physically try to get into a fight with you, right? Mix it up with you. You would think, okay, in this case, I'm allowed to what? To retaliate. The Prophet said no. He said, فَإِنْ سَابَهُ أَحَدٌ أَوْ قَاتَلَ فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي إِمْرٌ صَائِمٌ. He said, if someone insults him or threatens him with violence, then he shouldn't reciprocate, but rather he should say, I'm fasting. Right? I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to participate in that. I'm fasting. So what do we take from this hadith? Again, which speaks to our overarching assertion. And that is that fasting is more spiritual than it is physical. Number one, fasting in Islam requires more than abstaining from food and drink. You guys see that? Because you see, the whole hadith says nothing about what? Don't eat, don't drink. He focused on what? On other things, which means fasting requires more than just what? Abstaining from food and drink. That bad character and immorality negatively impact one's fast. If you're fasting, don't do this, don't do this. Why? Because it will negatively impact your fast. It will decrease the ajr, decrease the reward you get for fasting. If somebody's provoking you, they're poking the bear, so to speak. What would it take for you not to? The natural instinct is what? To defend yourself, right? So that means, in order to not do that, you'd have to do what? Right? You'd have to what? Exercise some what? Some self-restraint, right? Exercise some restraint, some self-control. Control your emotions. So what is the Prophet telling you? If he says, if somebody tries to fight with you, somebody tries to poke the bear, what? Don't give in to that. Don't retaliate. He's saying self-restraint, self-control, controlling your temper goes hand in hand with fasting. You guys see that? Again, showing you that fasting is not just what? Not just not eating and drinking, but it's more so that character piece. You know, having the exalted standard of character and exemplifying that throughout what? Throughout the fast. That another example was the athar, the statement of Jabir ibn Abdullah. And that was where he said, إِذَا صُمْتَ فَلْيَصُمْ سَمْعُكَ وَبَصَرُكَ وَلِسَانُكَ عَنِ الْكَذِبِ وَالْمَحَالِ وَدَعَنْكَ أَذَى الْجَارِ وَلْيَكُنْ عَلَيْكَ وَقَارٌ وَسَكِينَةٌ وَلَا يَكُنْ يَوْمُ صَوْمِكَ وَيَوْمُ فِطْرِكَ سَوَاءً. He said, if you fast, then let your hearing and sight fast as well. And let your tongue fast from lying and other illegal activity. Avoid mistreating your neighbor. I'll pause here. The Prophet said, let your tongue fast from lying and other illegal activity. Means what? Things like what? Like backbiting. Right? Like slander. You guys see that? Fast from that. He also said, avoid mistreating your neighbor. Be dignified and calm, and let not your days of fasting and non-fasting be what? Identical. There should be a difference. A difference in terms of what? Not eating and drinking? That's the obvious difference, right? He's saying beyond that, right? In terms of your character, in terms of your behavior, in terms of how you conduct yourself. So, what do we say? Take from that? Fasting in Islam requires more than just abstaining from food and drink. It's right there in front of you. He said, don't let your days of fasting and non-fasting be the same. Obviously, he's not talking about food and drink because that's the obvious difference. That's an obvious difference. He's talking about more than that. But also, bad character and immorality negatively impact one's fast. Don't backbite. Don't slander. Don't lie. Right? Again, these things will do what? Diminish the reward. And lastly, but not least, again, speaking to that theme, fasting is more of an internal struggle than a what? An external struggle. You guys see that? We're supposed to be fighting ourselves on the inside side, learning how to practice self-restraint. How to what? Not say things we shouldn't say. Right? That type of thing. But then finally, we mentioned the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, رُبَّ صَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْجُوعُ وَالْعَطَشِ. Some people gain nothing but hunger and thirst from their fasting. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ, is he just saying this like a person says, plants grow well in fertile soil when they get a lot of water and a lot of sun. Is the Prophet saying it like that? Is that what the Prophet's saying? Just saying stating a fact? Is that what he's doing? When he says, some people gain nothing but hunger and thirst from their fasting. Is this just stating a fact? If you put water on a stove and turn the eye of the stove on, after a few minutes it will what? It will boil. That's what? That's just stating a fact, right? So when the Prophet says, some people gain nothing but hunger and thirst from their fasting, is he just stating a fact? No. He's mentioning this, what we call it, بالعربي we say, في سيرة الذم. في سيرة الذم. He's mentioning it in a critical context. He's saying it in a negative way. He's saying some people, all they get from their fasting is what? Hunger and thirst, and that's a bad thing, right? He's saying it's a bad thing. Means that they're doing something wrong and they are not fasting correctly. You guys see that? Again, so what is the Prophet saying? He's saying that fasting is more than what? Just not eating and not drinking. They gain nothing from hunger and thirst is a clear indication the person is supposed to gain what? Supposed to gain more. You guys see that? You're supposed to gain more than that. Again, the Prophet speaking to what we say, that fasting is more spiritual than it is what? Than it is physical. Like all of these texts, again, like we said, they reiterate what we said at the outset. That what is fasting about? It's about reining ourselves in. It's about making ourselves better. It's about more of a spiritual exercise or a moral exercise than it is a physical one. Like we wanted to talk about, so we said this is the real focus of fasting. The real focus of fasting is what? Is being better on the inside. Being better in terms of our character, etc. and so on. Improving ourselves spiritually. Being better Muslims and better worshippers. Like we said, but what happens sometimes is we're fasting and we take our eyes off the prize. This is the prize, and we take what? We take our eyes off the prize. We get distracted, and it turns out our focus becomes something other than what? Than the real or the reality of fasting or the real focus of fasting, which is what? Making ourselves what? Making ourselves better. Making ourselves better in terms of what? How we practice self-control, how we behave, how we comport ourselves, etc. And we said one of the ways that we take, one of the things that distracts our focus, one of the things where our focus goes, that it shouldn't go there, but it does go there, is we talked about our obsession with food in Ramadan. Is that not so? We talked about our obsession with food in Ramadan, right? We become obsessed with food. You guys agree with that or no? Do some people become obsessed with food in Ramadan?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Then we asked the question. We said, is Ramadan the month of fasting or the month of feasting, right? Month of fasting or the month of feasting. And if you ask any Muslim, you line up 100 Muslims and you ask them to answer with what? To answer with their minds and their mouths. Answer this question with your mind and your mouth. One by one. Fasting or feasting? Fasting or feasting? All going to say what? Fasting. 100 Muslims, all 100 will say what? Fasting. That's what they'll say with what? With their mouth. That's what they say with their what? With their mind. But their actions say what? Their actions say something different. Their actions say feasting. You guys see that? And we mentioned the khutbah we said. In Ramadan, in the month of fasting, not feasting, the month of fasting, tensions boil over. And people become visibly upset. And even verbally abusive and sometimes physically what? Physically abusive. And the root cause of all that is what? Is food. More specifically, being satisfied with the portions, with the quality, with the temperature, with the packaging, or with the timing. It took too long for me to get the food. I had to stand that long line. So much so that we said that some people, they would actually quit the masjid. Quit the masjid over what? Over food. Alright? Last year, unfortunately, there were some people who actually stopped coming to the masjid. And not just for dinner. They stopped coming for what? For everything. Everything. They didn't come for salat in congregation. For example, salat al-isha. They didn't come for salat al-tarawih. They didn't participate in any of the other activities in the masjid. And why did they do that? They did that because why? Because the masjid was giving them what? Box dinner. The masjid was giving them a box dinner. Now what does that say to me? Okay, now basically Ramadan is like this harvest. The month of harvest. Harvesting what? harvesting hasanat, harvesting good deeds, right? And a lot of the good deeds that you harvest are going to be what, right? Right here in the masjid. Think about it. You come to the masjid, it's full of Muslims. And every time you meet one of those Muslims and say what? Assalamu alaikum, you get what? Hasanat. Right? Ashara, if you say Assalamu alaikum. Ishreen, if you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thalathin, if you say what? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You all see that? So you're giving up those hasanat. Alright? Also, if you were to, for example, go when we have iftar, when we have dates and other things, and you were going to collect those things for somebody and bring them to somebody and basically assist in them breaking their fast, you'll get what? You'll get the reward for their fast. They won't lose the reward, but if you help somebody break their fast, guess what? You get the reward as if you what? As if you fast. You guys see that? That's a reward you miss out on that. Right? Also the fellowship. Creating what? Building these bonds of brotherhood. Right? We've been ordered by the Prophet ﷺ. He said, "Kunu ya ibadallahi ikhwana." Oh, Muslims, be what? Be brothers to one another. When you make effort to obey the Prophet, you get what? You get that reward. We're missing out on that too. We're here for Maghrib and we're here for Salat al-Isha. When you pray Salat al-Maghrib and Salat al-Isha jama'atan, you get 25 times the reward you would get if you prayed that prayer at home. But if you say, you quit the masjid, you miss out on those rewards. You all see that? We mentioned in the khutbah that when you pray Salat al-Tarawih and you pray with the Imam from beginning to end, right? As the Prophet said, "Man qama ma'al imam hatta yansarif, kutiba lahu qiyam wa laylatin kamila." He said, whoever prays Salat al-Tarawih with the Imam from beginning to end, until the Imam what? He leaves. You pray until he leaves, you don't leave until he leaves. It will be written for you that you prayed an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours. No, it'll be written as if you prayed what? The entire night. Imagine getting that for 30 nights in Ramadan. You see that? But we're missing out on the reward. What does that show you? If somebody says, box dinners, oh, I quit. It means what? Your priority is what? Is the food, not the hasanat. You've lost the focus, or your focus is not really where it should be. They have lost sight of the real focus of fasting. You guys see that? Or so they're focused more on the food, or they're focused more on having things their way. What we have to do is we have to understand that the shaitan, one of the games that he plays, is to get us to prioritize the wrong things. This is one of the things he loves to do. He loves for you to prefer al-mafdul al-fadil. Right? He wants you to prefer, or al-mafdul al-afdal. So if shaitan, listen, the shaitan is like this. Look, he'll take any victory. So sometimes the shaitan, he can't get you to pray. He can't get you to stop praying. So what he'll do is he'll get you to focus on the prayer that will give you the lesser reward. He can't get you to stop giving charity, but he'll get you to focus on the charity that gives you less reward. You guys see that? And the same way, he'll get you to focus on things which are mubah instead of things that will earn you reward. You guys see that? So a person can go watch a soccer match. He can play a soccer match. But if he spends 3 or 4 hours in the summer playing soccer, that's 3 or 4 hours where he didn't read Quran, he didn't make dhikr, he didn't listen to a lecture and learn about his deen. You guys see that? He still prayed, but he didn't pray in the masjid. You guys see that? And so the shaitan will get you to prefer al-mubah, the permissible thing, over something that will get you reward. You guys see that? And so we have to be mindful of the tricks of the shaitan. But like we mentioned, that when we come here to this masjid in Ramadan, a masjid where they provide iftar, they provide provisions to break your fast, dates, soup, fruit, juice, tea, coffee, all those things are provided. In fact, sometimes they have like things like sambusa and pakora. If you eat the iftar, that's dinner, right? For some people, 7-8 days into Ramadan, your stomach shrinks. You eat the iftar and you're like, you know what? I'm good. I don't even need dinner. I'm living. This is provided for free. Then on top of it, they give you dinner. A lot of masajid, most of the masajid I've been to, they don't do any of that. There's no iftar. Not even iftar, not even dates. You got to bring your own dates, let alone what? Dinner. But in this masjid, we get tested. We get tested. We get that box dinner, we're being tested. And we mentioned 4 ways we're being tested. 1, we're being tested. Will we focus on the wrong things? Our stomach. Will we focus on the wrong thing? Our stomach. You know, the main thing is what? What I'm going to eat. What I'm going to eat. No, that's not the main thing. But some people come hyper-focused on their stomachs. To the point that you have people who say to the imam, who's leading the prayer, they say, hey, make it short. Make it quick. We're hungry. See what I'm saying? If the person recites al-duha, how many ayat in al-duha? Right? They said that was too long. That was too long, right? That was too long. Make it shorter, right? Because we're hungry. After they ate what? Iftar, soup and dates and sambusa and whatever. Like that's one. So we're being tested when we focus on the wrong thing. Don't focus on the wrong thing. It's not about the food. Number 2. Not about your stomach. Number 2. The second test is what? Will we forget that our provisions have already been predetermined? Person gets the box, they open it. And the person next to them opens their box at the same time. They look at their box, they have a big what? A chicken breast. And this person got a chicken leg. So,
yeah, that's unfair.
It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. But I'm going to ask you honestly. That chicken leg that you got, that you were going to get a chicken leg on Tuesday, the 8th of Ramadan, that was written what? 50,000 years before the creation of the heavens and the earth. It was written for you that it was going to happen. Nothing can change it. You're not going to get a grain of rice more than what Allah has already decreed for you to get. And so you can't be upset. You got to say, Qadr Allah, this is what Allah willed. And even if I stood where you were standing, I would still got what? The chicken leg, and you still got the breast, because that was written for it to happen. Are we going to forget that? That's another test. Like the third test that we mentioned was a test that will we prioritize feeding our bodies over feeding our souls? Like the people say, well, I quit. I'm going to eat at home. I'm going to eat at home. Box lunch is cold. I'm just going to eat at home. Okay, you're going to eat at home and miss out on what? On what's really important. Feeding what? Your soul. With the Salat al-Jama'ah and Taraweeh and greeting the brothers, right? And creating what? These bonds and all the rewards you get that comes with all of that. Last but not least, we said you'll be tested. Because you'll be tested, will you forget how little others have? How little others have. Man, you get that box, and I'm going to be honest, raise your hand if you got the box right around the middle of Ramadan or maybe after the middle of Ramadan and you couldn't finish it. You finished it, Maruf, I couldn't finish it. And there were other people, at least when I would sit, there were other people who struggled to finish it. They struggle to finish. We get the box. It has rice. It has a protein. It has a vegetable. Sometimes it has other things in addition to that. And compared to, and this is what we get for dinner, not considering what we get for iftar. You have people in Gaza, for example, people in Sudan, people in Yemen, right? They don't get anywhere near that. They might have one meal a day. If they have one meal a day, they might go days without what? Without a meal, and it's not even a meal. It's not even a meal. So, for example, there were people.
And even here, when you eat at the table, we have a lot of options. We don't have that.
Exactly, they don't have an option. It'll be one thing, right? It'll just be bread, right? It'll just be bread. That's it. That's dinner. That's it. Bread. It'll be soup. That's more water than soup. Right? That's it. That's what you get. And I remember during the height of the genocide, there was a man. It was pitch black dark, and there was a man, and he came across a bag of flour that apparently had fallen off a truck, and it bust open, and so you got the bag that's burst open, split open. And you've got flour mixed with what? The dirt of the sand. This man started collecting it and he was praising Allah. He was praising Allah. Thank you, Allah. Thank you, Allah. Alhamdulillah. He was praising Allah on his knees, crying, and he was picking up flour that was mixed with dirt that he would be able to what? He would be to eat. And here we come, and you get a box that has rice, and has chicken, or has lamb, or has beef, and it has vegetables, and it has salad, and it may have a dessert, right? And we have all these things, and we complain. We're being tested. Will we forget? Other people would kill to have what we have, to be able to give their children. I remember there was a young girl, and she was crying because they didn't have anything to eat. And she wasn't crying for herself. She was crying because her grandmother had died from being hungry. She starved to death. She wasn't crying for herself. She was crying for what? For her elderly grandmother who died from a jua. She died from starvation. I say all this to say is that it's very important for us to do two things. One, to internalize this, the real focus of fasting. Don't be a person who focuses too much on food. The other thing too we have to do is we have to be people who remind others. Because you might have it in your mind, whatever I get in this box, I'm going to take it and I'm not going to complain. But other people will complain. And it's your responsibility now. It's your responsibility. You got to say, Akhi. It's not about food. Akhi, this was decreed for you 50,000 years before the creation of the earth. Akhi, people in Sudan would love to have what you're eating right now. People in Yemen would love to have it. Shame on you. We have to do that. We have to create a culture where we appreciate the gifts, just the service of having iftar and dinner. That is a huge service that the masjid is providing, and it takes a huge burden off what? Off of our shoulders and the shoulders of what? Our families. We can come home from work, collect our families, and come to the masjid and find everything we need here. Y'all see that? That's a huge service, and we should appreciate the people in leadership who make that happen every year. The film in the second khutbah, we said that we were going to give a nugget every Jumu'ah in February. We'd give a nugget from Black history that was pertinent to our experience or our situation, or relevant to us as Muslim Americans or American Muslims or Muslims living in America. And the thing that we talked about in the khutbah as the nugget that we want to talk about today was, it revolved around Kenneth and Mamie Clark. They were African-American psychologists, a married couple. They were both psychologists, and they did some research in the 40s, and they became famous for the research that they did. And they particularly became famous for something called the Dahl study or the Dahl experiment. And so basically what they did was they had subjects, and their subjects were all between 5 and 7 years old. Little kids, still innocent, right? Some of them hadn't gone to school yet, just started school, or what? Or just were 2 years into school, right? And they would give them 2 dolls. One doll was white with blonde hair, the other doll was what? Brown with black hair. Other than that, they were what? Identical, right? And they would ask them a series of questions. So for example, they would ask him, which doll is nice? Which doll is mean? Which doll is good? Which doll is bad? Which doll is ugly? Which doll is pretty? Which doll would you like to play with? Which doll looks like you? And when they would ask them these questions, overwhelmingly, in fact, in the first study, all of them, right, chose the what? The white doll. Right? They chose the white doll. This is the one I want to play with. This is the one that's nice. This is the one that's good. Right? And so on and so forth. And we talked about how that shows that over and over again, we said this study was repeated all over the world. All over the world. It's been replicated all over the world many times over. It's not just an American thing, but it's something that's been done all over the world. And whenever it's been replicated, the results were what? Pretty much the same. And we said what the experiment shows is that over and over again, children as young as 5 all over the world have internalized color and color-based prejudice. And how much of that, then we said, how much of that comes from the environment we as adults create? Because they're kids. They're 5 years old. They haven't gone to school yet. So they have to be getting it from somewhere. And how much of it is coming from what? From the environment, right? how much of it is in the air, and we made it what? We put it there. We put it there. The adults put it there. How much of it, we said, is caused by what we parents directly or indirectly teach our kids? Directly or indirectly. How much of that is coming from what? From us ourselves. How much of it are we to blame? But, so to expand on that, so for example, media. We talk about the environment. That we as adults create, media. And media includes things that our kids consume, like television, and things on the internet, and things on social media, right? YouTube videos, cartoons. But cartoons, which have good characters, which are what? Fair-skinned. And bad characters, which are what? Darker-skinned. Good characters which have white-sounding voices. Bad characters which have what? Black-sounding voices, right? How much of that subliminal messaging is happening to them? And they're thinking that, yeah, the good people are the people who are what? Fair-skinned. And the fairer your skin is, the better you are. But think about that. Like, what about our own preferences? What about our own preferences? So when we're choosing things to watch, right, that our kids will sit with us and see us watch, or the things that we choose, how much of that? So for example, we go into a store, right, environment, and there are two salespeople. One of them is white, one of them is what? Black or brown. We always choose what? The white salesperson, right? Are we sending a message, right? Through the environment, right? Are we sending it? I'll give you another example from the environment. School. How often are our kids experiencing peer pressure to associate themselves to be, for example, what they call white adjacent, right? Proximity to whiteness, right? To prefer white friends, to prefer white classmates. When you have a project, prefer to be what? With a white partner, etc. and so on. How much of it is coming from that? And then last but not least, we talked about how much of it is caused by what we, our parents, directly or indirectly teach our kids. So for example, some parents, do they use racial slurs? Do they say things that indicate that what? These people are what? Are bad. Okay? I don't know if a 5 or 6 year old is saying some of these words about people, bad things that are said about people, some of the slurs that are said about people. If they're saying that, I don't know, where did they get it from? They didn't read it in a book, right? They didn't read something. They had to hear an adult say that. And it's again, parents have to think about that. Am I teaching them indirectly by what? Saying these words. Like another thing too is that some parents will say, for example, their child has some kids that they play with on the block. They're of the same age. And there are certain kids that are of certain color and certain ethnicity, and certain kids are of certain color and certain ethnicity. They say what? You can play with them, but you can't play with them. Are we teaching them indirectly that these people are good and these people are bad, right? So for example, he wants to bring somebody to his house. Hey, I want to bring so-and-so to my house to play PlayStation, to play Xbox. Well, who is it? It's so-and-so. No. He can't come to the house. Y'all see that? Are we indirectly teaching them that what? These people are good and these people are bad. The thing about that, I'd like to give an example of just showing that some of this stuff comes from the parents. I had somebody come to me early on when I came, not long after I came here, and they were saying that they had a relative, a cousin, who they thought would really benefit from coming to the masjid and maybe sitting with me and talking through some things or whatever. And I said, yeah, you should bring him to the masjid. And they said, well, it's a struggle because he said, the little boy was like 14 years old, and 14 years old is still pretty young, right? Still pretty young. Pretty early to be what? To be racist, to be colorist. The little boy said, according to this person who was saying that they wanted to bring them, that I don't want to go to that masjid because they're all Pakistanis and they don't know Arabic. But so what? Let's just say that was true. That's not true. But let's say it's true. They're all Pakistanis. So what? They don't know Arabic. So what? You see what I'm saying? It's like, why is that a bad thing? Why is it? And again, this ethnic prejudice. Where you learn that from? He had to learn it from somebody. Right? He had to learn something, and the parents have to take ownership in that, or at least part ownership in that. You see what I'm saying? Like, think about that, like we said in the khutbah we said, we as parents must make it a point to teach them not to call other kids names or promote hurtful stereotypes about them because of how they look. And here I wanted to say here that there's too many parents who rely on assumptions and what they want to believe is true about their kids. They rely on that in their assessment. They say, for example, my kids would never say that. My kids would never do that, right? What we can't do as parents is we can't assume. Brothers and sisters, the reality is kids can be mean. Kids can be really mean. Kids can be really, really mean. And they're not always who we think they are or we want them to be when we're not around. And so what does that mean? You have to talk to your kids. You have to be deliberate. You have to be active. You have to say, hey, what do you think about people who say things like this, right? Would you ever say something like that? Do you say stuff like that, right? What do you think about people who are this, that, or the other? And talk to them and tell them, they might not be completely honest with you about how they really feel, but you have to tell them, hey, you shouldn't be saying things like this. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't treat people differently because of how they look, etc. and so on. We have to be active. We have to be deliberate. And that's how the Prophet was. That's how the Prophet was. Sometimes he would, without prodding, without being solicited, he would talk about these issues. The issues of race and color, etc. And sometimes situations would happen and he would feel it was necessary to what? To speak out against it. Also, he was very keen to put people in positions to let people know, hey, color doesn't matter. It's about merit. When he first got to Mecca and he did the conquest, and prayer came in. So he did the conquest of Mecca, prayer came in, and some of these Meccans, they were still pagans. They hadn't converted to Islam. And they still had all of those, not just the pagan beliefs, but all those other beliefs from Jahiliyyah. Like the belief that what? Certain colors are better and certain ethnicities are better, etc. So when the prayer came in, what did the Prophet do? When the prayer came in, did the Prophet have more than one muaddin? He had Bilal, but he also had what? Abdullah ibn Maktoum, right? So he had more than one muaddin, right? And he had other people who could make the adhan. But when the prayer came in, the Prophet insisted that who make the adhan? Bilal. But not just that. He insisted they do what? Climb on top of the Kaaba. Put his black feet on top of the holiest place in the world. You don't think that was on purpose? You don't think that was by design? The Prophet wanted to do what? Elevate him and let them know, hey, whatever you people believe and understand about these types of things, this is not how we operate. We operate totally differently. I say all this to say is that we have to be just like that. The Prophet is setting the example, setting the tone. Hey, we got to teach our kids. Hey, we don't do that. We don't do that. We don't talk like that. We don't play with these kids and not play with these kids. We don't do that. We have to be very, very deliberate because our kids are doing some of these things and we're in denial. And we don't want to raise kids like that. We don't want to do that. And with that, brothers and sisters, I'll bring my remarks to a close and we'll take any questions or comments you guys may have. Tafaddal biha. Tafaddal, Ra'af.
So, I think that the second khutbah that you did along with Black History Month, actually could be tied into the first khutbah because it talks about controlling what you say and how you behave.
MashaAllah. See, that's why I need you, brother. When I wrote this, man, I needed you, brother, and you were not there, and I didn't do as good as I could have because you weren't there, brother. Jazakallah khair, brother. Thank you for that. Like anybody else? Questions, comments?
I would say in the hadith where you say, or the kind of, it's not extension, but it's the first of the hadith where the Prophet said, كل عمل ابن آدم له إلا الصيام. وأنا زكي. So every deed, prayer, hajj, you name it, it's to yourself. And then, but Ramadan you fast, as he said, you gotta be fasting for a lot of things, from your mouth, whatever. But this is, you fast 30 days, whatever, you gotta fast. But this is between you and Allah. And at the end, inshallah, we all will be at that. We enter that door to the paradise. So there's one door for the people, the fasting, or And back into the color issue, I would say a little story actually. When first time I came to the States, I was in New Jersey, and they were doing kind of one of the, it's in Patterson, Jersey, where there's a lot of Arabs or Palestinians, that's where I came in. And they were a big mosque, and they were doing the same thing, like, you know, kind of breaking fast, helping the people, they have their own kitchen, whatever. So when I came, I was talking to my family, and I was like, oh, like, you know, we're in the mosque, was, you know, kind of like, you know, and next to me, it's like, and who's that person? Like, you know, I was talking, he was speaking to me English, like, yeah, he's an African American.
Yeah.
And even my people back home say, like, oh, really? You're not scared of him? I was like, no, a real story, I'm not lying. I was like, no, he is Muslim. Say yes, because wouldn't face him kind of much, you know, and there's like, Lord, like my brother and my sisters. I was like, no, he's a Muslim. You know, that's the whole thing. And I'll go back to, it's in the Islam, where you talked about where Abu Dhar, when he called Bilal ibn Sawda, when he went back, and this issue, yes, even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But as you said, we have to teach ourselves first and make sure, yeah, he is my brother, you know, in Islam. Because nothing, as you said, it's لا فرق لعربي على أجنبي إلا بالتقوى. It's higher. And that's what we have to teach our kids. So I have to show them, yeah, he's a Muslim, he's a human being, he's like us. He might be, you know, in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing more than
better than us, subhanAllah.
We have just kind of just teach ourselves first and teach our kids.
Jazakallah khair. Allah bless you for that. That's it. طيب, anybody else going on? Saad, تفضل Sheikh, yes.
Can we make a small remark? I've seen before in Korea, the people, you know, they eat some of the food and then they throw in the garbage. And I think this is, anytime, it should not happen. Either take it within home, throw it in the garbage. I think it's wrong.
I agree with you, and that's...
I hate it when I see them. If they cannot eat it, they take it and not throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, this is one of the ظواهر الرمضانية التي يجب أن نجتنبها. It's one of those things that it happens a lot. It's a trend in Ramadan that we really need to do better about getting away from it and not wasting food. We waste a ton of food, and we really try to press on it. One, that just like you said, it is haram. وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ. And so the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that do not waste or squander wastefully. Indeed, those who waste are the brothers of the devils. So it's a very serious crime to waste. That's part of it. But the other part of it is it's a slap in the face of all those Muslims around the world who are starving. We gonna throw this away, and they're starving. We gonna throw this away, and they don't have any water to drink. So I agree with you 100%. This is one of the things, and inshallah, I think in one of the coming khutbahs, we're going to talk about that. You know, one of our focuses, we talk about the real focus of fasting, should be thinking of others. And thinking of others is not just you feeding them, right? Because fasting is about that, right? Thinking about how others who are hungry feel, and having some sympathy and empathy for them. You know, Ramadan is supposed to inculcate that in us. But beyond that, thinking about how hurtful it is if they see a video of us, you know, and enjoying our iftar, and then they see us half eating it and throwing it away. How would that make them feel? And they're sitting here taking flour and gathering it with dirt and praising God that they'll have something to eat, even though it's mixed with what? It's mixed with soil. So yeah, I 100% agree with you, Akhi, that this is one of those things that we need to do better about, a lot better. Like any other.
Yeah, a few years ago, there was a brother who used to collect food as names and take it to
a shelter or something?
a shelter, yeah. Not shelter, but retirement home.
Ah.
And those people used to look for it.
MashaAllah.
Every time you take it there with you, and they used to do it. It's something that's different when you know.
And homemade.
Yeah, and then it's dawah also.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn about Muslims and all that. So I don't know what we can have with some
I definitely think we should try to figure out how we can do it. Even if there are probably some other agencies or institutions, especially nowadays, I imagine that would appreciate. There's been times, Ikhwan, to be honest with you, that I'm one of the last people to leave after an iftar. And I go in the kitchens just to see, and there are actually trays of food that were uneaten. They're not covered, they weren't refrigerated, they're just left on the counter, right there. Now what's going to happen when we come in the morning and find that tray of food that's been left out overnight? Is anybody going to take that home and eat that? Could they do it? Could they take it home and eat it? Should they? Basically, experts say you leave food out for 2 hours, you just supposed to throw it away. Right, bacteria gets into it. What? Leave it out all night? You can't eat that, right? And so I'm saying that we're just basically saying we're basically surrendering ourselves and say, you know what? We're just going to waste that. We're going to waste that. And so we shouldn't do that. So I 100% agree with the brother. I agree with what Dr. Ali said. We have to try to figure out how we can avoid so much waste in Ramadan, because it's shameful. It's shameful.
So I have a comment to make about that.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, when you see food is left over like this, two things. So I was going to speak for like either the food is uncooked.
You say it was uncooked?
Yeah, sometimes it's the rice, pretty much. You just cut it into the oven.
Okay.
So people cannot eat stuff like that.
I agree with you, but the ones that I've seen were not in that case. It was like, for example, I've seen a few times, like somebody will make something like, for example, they'll make beans or vegetables, right? So they'll make, like, for example, mixed vegetables. And it's a tray of mixed vegetables. Now, what may have happened is that they did the service and that came late. That came late. That's possible, right? Or they just didn't have a lot of people. That tray came on time, but they didn't get to it. At the end of the day, we have this tray. And what are we going to do now? If it's something that's not edible, that's different. But we have this tray of what, as far as we can tell, it's edible. And maybe even somebody took a few scoops out of it, but for the most part, it's like a full tray. The question is, okay, what do we do about that?
I think it was to take it, like, try to take it home, and not to leave it to rot.
Yeah.
Take it home, refrigerate it at a fire or at a school, or something for the next day, but not really waste it in the garbage. Like this is haram.
Yeah, unfortunately, people, that's exactly what people do. And that's another thing, too, about we're so spoiled. We're so spoiled. And so, because we have so much, somebody will see that and say, it's not too appealing to me. And so they'll just leave it. And that's the problem, too, with having so much. And I pray that God does not punish us by taking it away and making us like people overseas. If they were to see that, they wouldn't think twice. But we become the people who say, not interested in that, and we just leave it, unfortunately. And we leave it there overnight, and then it just gets thrown out. Tafadhal, Shaykh. Wa alaikum salam.
I just have a comment and a suggestion on it. Like 2 or 3 years ago, I was watching one video. These people were dating in Congo. They have some war going on. So please keep them on your plate.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
Most of them are they are living in their houses, like they have to go.
Refugees.
So I was watching one of their videos 2 or 3 years ago. It was our time, and all they had was rice and water or something like that. That video really, since that day, whenever I'm writing my past, my mind will go right into those people. It was a very sad video. So usually when we make prayers, I would like you guys to get them.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because we have to do a better job with that. Go ahead, Akhi.
And the second suggestion I will make, the first one is, I don't know what people are complaining about those boxes, but that was the best idea we could have come up with.
Jazakallah khair.
Because the line used to be so long, to a point where when you get to the food, sometimes before you want to finish eating, it's time to pay the shop. So a lot of people, they don't even finish their food.
Yeah.
Last year was very convenient because everybody just get their boxes. It was very quick.
Very efficient, yeah.
So I'm very surprised that people complain about that because that was a really nice idea. I think I even told
That was exciting, actually.
Yeah. So if you guys can keep that, let's keep it.
Jazakallah khair.
And the last one is, I feel like when we talk about something, people will be writing, they will listen to it. The next time, like whatever they say about the background, they forget about it.
Yeah.
Since we have TVs on these homes, I was thinking why can't they come up with like a video or something that they can put on the TVs when we're eating, showing what's going on with it.
Wow.
People are eating and please do West food or whatever messages they can put on the TVs that can be displayed while we're eating. Maybe that can happen.
That is a very good idea,
When they
Akhi.
see it on the TV, they're eating now and they see that please do not leave the food, please do not waste the water, please do not do this.
Wallahi, I like that. Yeah.
The Jumu'ah is not going to fix it.
Mm.
Every year you be here talking about please the water, the water, the water. The next thing you see is 20 bottles of empty water. So that's just a suggestion I want to make. If you guys can work on that, put a couple of TVs on the eating areas and display any messages that you can to see if it's going to cancel.
Wallahi, I like that idea. The only thing I don't like about it is I didn't come up with it. But no, it's a very, very good idea, Akhi, and inshallah, I'm going to follow through with it. I'm going to talk with the audio-visual people and see if we can do something like that. Maybe get some cut-ups, and while we eat, we'll play that. That's a very good idea, Akhi. May Allah bless you for thinking of that, man. All you better keep. No, we've done that. That's what he was talking about. We always talk about every year to the point that people got upset with me because I talk a lot about wasting water. And even what I would do is I would take bottles that we wasted each night. I would go around in the evening after everybody left and I would collect bottles that were half drunk or quarter drunk or whatever. And I would put them on the minbar. The first year I would like make signs, and the second year all I did was just put it up there for the people to see. I didn't talk about it too much. But either way, it annoyed people. And so I think what he said is that while people are eating, you got this message, and maybe you're showing people in Gaza, people in Sudan, people in the Congo, people in Yemen who don't have anything to eat. Maybe children who are saying, we have nothing to eat, we're hungry. Like, there's lots of videos like that. And hopefully when that message is right there while you are what? Eating, it just makes it difficult while you see this little girl. It may have an effect. I agree with you, Akhi, it's worth trying. We haven't tried it. We can try it. Man, I think it's a good idea. Jazakallah khair. But anything else, Shaykh? I want to get you guys out. It's 8:30 or after 8:30.
Just one educational thing.
Hey.
You gave the example of the toys. It reminded me that Kenneth and Nathan Clark, those psychologists, it's their study that led to the segregation of schools.
Exactly.
Because in Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall had those laws in his hands. And also he gave the story about the law.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
These 9 Supreme Court white delegates, this story was just like the clinching
Subhanallah.
that made them desegregate the schools.
Mhm.
One was the Board of Education.
Yep.
These laws
That was a big part of it.
changed the decision. When they saw that that would happen, when you continuously brainwash people, they passed the law and desegregated schools immediately. I just like this.
No, Jazakallah khair, that was an important nugget to mention because that study was cited in Brown versus Board of Education. And basically what they were trying to show was that when you have segregated schools, how that affects the people who were denied access to that same level of education, and how it makes them internalize their own inferiority and makes the other people internalize their own superiority. And then they used the study to show that these people were internalizing, kids as little as 5 years old were internalizing that they were inferior. Which dowel do you like? The white dowel. But they were black kids saying that. Which dowel is pretty? The black dowel. Which one is bad? I'm sorry, which one is pretty? The white dowel. Which one is bad? Which one do you think would do bad things or be a criminal? The black dowel. right? Which one looks like you? And they would point to the black down and put their heads down, right? And so he's citing the study in that case, like Dr. Ali eloquently said, and the judges themselves, he said all white judges, they were like, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. It makes a lot of sense. And that study was one of the things that kind of tipped the scales in favor of them deciding that, yeah, we should desegregate the schools. They should have access, and they should be they should mix with people so that those people who are in this position of advantage will realize there's nothing different between us and these kids in reality, right? They'll also have the opportunities, the black and brown kids would have the same opportunity at a quality education, the same access to a quality education. And also they would no longer internalize their inferiority. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That's 100% true. Like, any other questions, comments, critiques? Going once, going twice. Go. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه